The concept of Nazism was given by Hitler. Hitler was the dictator and chancellor of Germany. The ideology of Nazis started with the World War I. The World War I was fought between the Allies and the Central Powers. After the defeat of Imperial Germany and the abdication of the Emperor, a national assembly was formed that was known as Weimar Republic, which was later on responsible for the signing of Treaty of Versailles. The effects of World War I. Europe was turned from a continent of creditors to debtors. The supporters of Weimar Republic was known as the November criminals. Soldiers were placed above the civilians and the trench life was glorified. Political radicalism. The birth of the Weimar Republic coincided with the revolutionary uprising of the Spartacus League on the pattern of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. The Weimar Republic crushed the uprising of the Spartacus League with the help of a war veterans organization that was known as Free Corps. The economic crisis of 1923. Germany had to pay the reparations in gold. Ruhr, that was a great prominent industrial area of Germany, was occupied by the French. The paper currency was printed recklessly, due to which the value of German mark fell. This crisis came to be known as hyperinflation. Germany was bailed out of this by the American colonies by the introduction of the Davis Plan. The years of depression and the rise of Hitler. The Wall Street Exchange of USA was crashed, due to which more than 13 million shares were sold. The industrial production was reduced to 40%, due to which 6 million people got unemployed. The rise of Hitler. Hitler joined a small group called the German Workers' Party, where, after the years of depression and the rise of Hitler, the Wall Street Exchange was crashed, due to which more than 13 million shares were sold. The industrial production was reduced to 40%, due to which 6 million people got unemployed. Rise of Hitler. Hitler joined a small group called the German Workers' Party. After some years, he renamed it to National Socialist German Workers' Party. This party came to be known as the Nazi Party. The destruction of democracy. By 1932, the Nazi Party had become the largest party with 37% votes. After that, Hitler won the elections. The President Hindenburg offered chancellorship to Hitler. After that, Hitler issued a fire of decree which suspended the civil rights. The famous Enabling Act was passed by Hitler, which established dictatorship in Germany. Reconstruction. After becoming the dictator of Germany, Hitler appointed Hjalmar to improve the economic conditions of Germany. He aimed at full production and full employment through a state work funding program system. This project produced the famous German superhighways and the people's car, the Volkswagen. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. This started a war with France and England. When Japan extended its support to Hitler and bombed the US base at Pearl Harbor, the US entered the Second World War. The war ended in May 1945 with Hitler's defeat and the US.
The Nazi Party, led by Hitler, rose to power in Germany in the 1930s. They exploited economic hardships and national sentiments, promoting Aryans at the topmost position. They also considered them as superiors. Through propagandas, suppression of dissent, and the Enabling Act, they gained control over the government. This culminated the World War I and the Holocaust, which resulted in immense suffering and destruction. Now let's talk about the Nazi worldview. The Nazi worldview was based on systems and beliefs that was based on racial hierarchy. On the top of the most were the blue-eyed, blonde, and the German Nordic Aryans, while the Jews were the topmost sufferers and were considered the lowest race. Racism of Hitler was borrowed from the racial thinkers like Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer. Hitler modified the ideas of these thinkers for his own will and political aims and to justify his actions. Darwin and Spencer never supported human intervention. Now let's move on to the racial state establishment. The Nazis wanted a society of pure and healthy Nordic Aryans. The Jews, the Gypsies, the Poles, and the Russians were considered as the undesirable people. Jews were the topmost of the sufferers because they were considered as usurers and they were also considered as the killers of Christ. The undesirable people had to live in a separate society which was known as ghettos. The ghettoization was consisted of organized violence. According to Hitler, the Jewish problem could only be solved through total elimination. Now let's talk about the racial utopia. Much of the northwestern Poland annexed Germany and they were forced to leave. Their homes were to be occupied by the ethnic Germans of the annexed Europe. The general government was formed for the undesirable people, including the Poles. The members of the Polish intelligentsia were murdered. The Polish children, who looked like Aryans, were sent to the race experts to classify whether they were Germans or they were Polish children. Hitler was very much interested in the Nazi youth of Germany. All the schools were purified. It means the children who were Jews or they were physically undesirable were thrown out of the schools. Teachers who were Jews were dismissed, and the Germans and the Jews couldn't sit together. Jews and physically handicapped were sent to the gas chambers. The racial science was introduced to justify Nazi idea of race. 10 years old had to join Jungpo. At 14, they were physically trained and were taught to hate Jews. After the age of 14, they served armed forces and they had to join any one of the Nazi organizations. Now let's talk about the Nazi cult of motherhood. The boys were told to be aggressive, masculine, and strong, while the girls were taught to be good mothers and produce German Nordic Aryan children. Women who bore undesirable children, like the Jewish children or any other, were punished, and the children who were given birth as German Nordic Aryans were awarded. They were given special treatments in every public sphere and had a good care who bore the children of Aryans. Honor crosses were awarded on the basis of the number of children, as gold, silver, and bronze, to the mothers. The girls were not allowed to meet Jews, Poles, or Russian people. Now let's talk about the art of propaganda. How Nazi used languages with care. They were playing with the words. Words were often deceptive, describing them as chilling. Nazis never used the word kill or murder in their official communication, but they used the words like final solution, euthanasia, selection, disinfection.